I needed to hear that. What's going on with the screen? Select the window. That's the only one that's coming up. Oh, what is that? Hold on one second. For some reason the screen's not showing everything that's on the files. Fuck. That's weird. Okay, hold on one second. That's the whiteboard. Oh, I wonder if I could put that, if I could transfer onto the whiteboard. Hold on one second. That's going to give me a problem. And then, can you see this? Can you see the sheet that I have up with words on it? Can anybody see that?
No, it's all white.
It's all white. Okay, thank you. I wonder what's going on with that, why that is happening. Shit. Okay, well, it looks like I'm going to have to, I don't know why the share is not working. 1 second, I'll just try one more time. Nope. It will not share anything but it won't share anything but this. That's so weird. Okay, I'm going to stop. And what should I do? I guess maybe I will use the whiteboard and I'll just write. Okay. For some reason, I don't understand what's going on. Okay, so what we're going to look at today is we're looking at death, and this really pisses me off. It's kind of taking me off, so sorry. What we're going to look at today is the Hyleg, is this thing called the Hyleg. Can I? Oh no, fuck that. Oh hell no. Oh shit, I don't know what to do. Okay, so I'm sorry, it's just gonna, I guess it's just gonna have to be as a talk because it won't let me, somehow it won't figure out the screens that I'm trying to do, and it won't let me do them. I don't understand what's going on. So we're looking at this thing called the Hyleg today, Hyleg. And yeah, no, it still won't come up. And okay, so we're looking for the Hyleg, and the Hyleg is the giver of life. This is really going to be difficult without that. The giver of life. So what I want you to do, see, I can't even, oh, well, I think of what you know what I'd like you to do? Do me a favor, and if somebody has their IMGUR link, send me that, and I will use that as I'll use that for kind of a visual aid, but I just don't understand why it's not showing up. As a matter of fact, you know what? I just want to pause the recording for a pause. It's indeed, okay. All right, so you should have the sheet up, and I'm gonna actually do this. Okay. Oh, that's right. All right, so, okay, so as you can see, what we're looking at first, okay, so basically what would happen is if when an astrologer from the time period that we're looking at, and we're talking about really from Ptolemy and Valence's time, which is like around the 1st century, to the 15th century or the 16th century. I think by the time we get to Lilly and that kind of thing, into like what we call the early modern era, or into the Baroque era, that's the Baroque period. Once we get into that era, then astrology starts, a lot of the tradition starts breaking down. A lot of it starts breaking down, and by the time we get into the 17th and the 18th century, then there's a lot of the tradition is is getting more piecemeal, and by the 20th century, then it's a completely different animal. So, but one of the things that would happen is in the 13th century, we're looking mostly at Bonatti at this time period, or most of these centuries, it was no guarantee that a person was going to live after they were born. Right, there was no guarantee that a person was going to survive childbirth and be able to suckle the breast and take nourishment. And so there were these 4 differentia of charts, and I didn't really talk about it. I have not really put it on here, but it's something we can. we don't really even need to look at it that closely. But there were these 4 differentia of charts that basically represented whether or not the person was going to survive. And so the first differential, or the first category, had to do with babies that either were spontaneously aborted, or were miscarriages, or were born stillborn, or for some reason couldn't take any nourishment. And so then the second category was children that got beyond childbirth, and they got to, they were able to nourish, but they died before infancy. And then then the third differential was people that didn't make it past maybe 12 or 13. So they didn't make it to childbearing age, because remember, childbearing age would have been much younger, right? So 15, 16, that would have been the time that you'd be having children around this time. And then the fourth differentia is people who were just going to live. Just the fourth category was people who were going to survive and live to a regular lifespan. So in order to understand that, what they had was this thing called the Hyleg. And the Hyleg is one of these 5 places: sun, moon, ascendant, part of fortune, or the previous conjunction of prevention. And when I say conjunction of prevention, I think you all know that I mean new moon. Oh, wait, well, Lily might not know that. New moon and full moon. Okay? So that's the new moon or full moon before you were born, right? So those of you we've been working together, we've been doing the Lord of the Genitor, the Almutum of the chart, and all that kind of stuff. And we've been working with this conjunction prevention thing. But this is something that we're going to look at in order to find the Hyleg. So what exactly kind of is the Hyleg? I guess it's basically the Hyleg is the measurement of life force in the chart. It's the giver of life, and it's the measure of life force. Now, it's not the measure of years, as you can see from the sheet. The Alcocoden is the giver of years, but the Hyleg is the representative of life itself in the chart. Not the person, but the life force of the person. And someone was saying, I read actually in something where they said that their teacher had said that the difference between the sun and the moon as the Hyleg was that the sun worked on the vitality as the Hyleg, and the moon worked on the constitution. Now, I was thinking about this as we were kind of coming to this today, and I thought, okay, so if the sun is the vitality and the moon is the constitution, the ascendant, what I've noticed is quite a few relatively famous people have the ascendant as Hyleg. And so, I mean, this is all conjecture, so do not take it as any, as the absolute. We try not to, what do I always say? We deal in ambiguity so that we can come to absolutes, right? So this is going to be one of those things. But maybe the ascendant, what is it? He said that the sun substantiates the vitality, the moon substantiates the constitution, the ascendant can substantiate maybe the body specifically, right? Because the ascendant represents the body, but it can also represent kind of fortify the public, or the visibility, the visual nature of the person and the body. The part of fortune might vitiate but might, shall we say, contribute to your life force based on like things that happen. So one of the things that he mentioned because remember, the part of fortune represents things that we don't control, things that happen to us that we don't necessarily control. One of the things he was talking about when he was talking about the sun was they had somebody who had the sun as a Hyleg, and they almost died when they were 7 or something like that. They had some kind of lung thing that happened, and it was because of modern science that they were able to survive it. And so he was speculating, Robert Soler was speculating as to whether the Hyleg actually is more than just something that contributes to our physicality and energy level, but something that contributes to events that keep us alive as well. So he was talking about the possibility of that, and that was something he was looking into. But so he was thinking that, I guess, a person with a Hyleg would find themselves in a situation, in a position to survive something like that, is basically what I think he was saying. So this thing of the Hyleg, it comes from this Arabic term, which is Hyleg. And there's this, so that's the Arabic term. And then there's this other term, Hyleg, in connection to this other term called eidos. And this was something that I learned about when I first got into these. You know, the thing that's really different about traditional astrology and modern astrology is that almost all of traditional astrology has a basis and an underpinning in some kind of philosophical system that precedes it. So there are Neoplatonic astrologers, and there's a Neoplatonic kind of aspect of astrology. There is Aristotelian astrology, and remember when we looked at the soul, the first thing that I did was read on De Anima, or On the Soul, by Aristotle, because it was all based on Aristotle. There is the whole Hermetic and planetary magic kind of, but almost all of it is based in some kind of real, actual philosophy. And this concept of Hyleg and eidos, the Hyleg represents kind of undifferentiated form. It would be the same thing as something like Prakriti, which is an Indian term, which is basically, or a Sanskrit term rather, which is basically kind of matter in potentiality, waiting to take form. And then eidos, or Shakti, is the form-giving principle. And now, Hyleg and eidos, oh wait, looks like I got a question here. It's Persian, huh? So it's not, it's Farsi, not Arabic. Is that correct? Excellent. Thank you, Layla. Excellent. Thank you very much. All right. And that makes sense, right? Because Persian, because really what we've been looking at, right? What we've been looking at from the very, very beginning, and what Bonatti was working with, is Persian, Arabic and Persian astrology, but really Persian. Most of the absolutely most important kind of developments in astrology that take us from the Hellenistic whole sign period into the quadrant house medieval period, it's Persia and Saudi Arabia. Persia and Saudi, but mostly Persia. So thank you for that correction. So we can see this issue of Hyleg and eidos in, for instance, the ascendant and the ruler of the ascendant, right? Or any sign and any planet. Any sign is the Hyleg of a planet. Any planet is the eidos of any sign. So for instance, Gemini. Gemini is the Hyleg of Mercury, right? Gemini is the substance, the prima materia of Mercury, but Mercury is the one that gives him form. Likewise with the ascendant and the ruler of the ascendant. Likewise, with the Hyleg and the Alcocoden, right? Because the Hyleg is life, is the potential of life, is the life force, in the potentiated life force. The Alcocoden is how long it lasts, right? It gives it form, and it gives it a beginning and an end. You know, once we come into the world of form, then we're in the world of limitation, which usually represents somewhere where we start and somewhere where we end. Okay, so that's kind of my little quasi-philosophical background on the Hyleg. And one of the things that I remember reading from this Zoller thing recently was that the first thing Bonatti would do before looking at the houses, before looking at your wealth or anything, is he'd look to see if the person was actually going to live long enough to experience what was promised in the chart. Now, of course, since we've got all these advances in modern medicine, there's less of that kind of thing going on. But it's still something to think about. And next week, when we look at the second half, I'll bring out some charts to look at the 4 categories a little bit. And then we'll also look at what the 8th house specifically says about death. And then we'll look at the 12th. But let's now find our Hyleg. So I guess what we're gonna need to do is, because I want to be able to help everybody find their Hyleg. So what I want everybody to do is I want everybody to click to do the usual thing. Go to astro.com, get your chart, go to imgur.com, upload it there, and then put it in the chat. But what I want everybody to do in the chat is I want everybody to download everybody's chart. Okay, so instead of me clicking on the link and we looking at it, that way you'll be able to follow with, because this is a kind of an interesting and important thing to kind of do. And there's the only way that you're going to be able to really know if it's right is if we're able to see the charts. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to talk about how to find the Hyleg and the Hyleg and the Alcocoden. And then we're going to go and do it with everybody's chart. So after I finish giving you kind of the rules for this, then go ahead and upload your IMGUR link, unless you have it already and you want to upload it now. Okay, so what the first thing you're going to do is, if it's a diurnal, you want to know if it's daytime or nighttime, as with always, right? Is it daytime? Is it nighttime? If it's daytime, you start with the sun. We're looking for the sun in the 1st, 10th, or 11th house in a male or female sign. This is a daytime chart only. You start with the sun. If he's not in any of those, he can be in the 7th, 8th, or 9th in a male sign only. And he has to be aspected by a planet who rules. Okay, great. That's fine, Lily. No problem. Oh, and perfect. Somebody's put theirs in. Maria, excellent. Okay, Maria has put hers into the chat, so please click on her link. Okay. All right. So, and it has to be aspected by one of the 5 dignities. That's why you need your astrological dignity chart. Because remember that the dignities are always specific to the degree of the sign that you're in. So if you've got something at, let's use my sun for an example, 11 degrees of Capricorn, I would get out my planetary dignity chart and I would see that Saturn, Mars, Moon, because it's a nighttime chart, Jupiter, and Mars are the 5. I would look for one of those 5 planets to be aspecting the sun in those places. Anne Louise, thank you. Okay, Anne Louise has now put her chart in, and I want everybody to click on her link as well. Great. Okay, does everybody understand what I just said? So you can see it basically here with this listing. 1st, 10th, and 11th in a male or female sign. 7th, 8th, or 9th in a male sign only. Aspected by a planet who rules one of the 5 dignities in that sign. Okay, that's what you're going to need your sheet for. Great. Diana Law has now uploaded hers. Be sure you click on her link. Excellent. Okay, so if the sun isn't, and Layla now also. Then we would move to the moon. In this case, it's not as specific. The moon needs to be either in an angular or succeeding house. We should, if any questions about that, ask me, but we should know what those are. in a female sign or female quarter, the female quarters are from the ascendant to the 4th, and from the 7th to the 10th. I'm not using Bonatti specifically for these rules. These are from Montuomo, and he's the only one that specifies a female quarter. So I would say I would prefer that the moon were in a female sign, and it needs to be aspected by one of its rulers as with the others. Okay, so remember that if it's a nighttime chart, you start with the moon, and you would be looking to see if she's angular or succedent in a female sign or quarter and aspected by one of the rulers of the 5 dignities. If the moon is not, then move to the sun, right? And vice versa. So you're going to start from the sun if it's a daytime chart. You're going to start from the moon if it's a nighttime chart. Okay. If neither of those are the Hyleg, and you were born under a previous full moon, you're going to look first from the part of fortune. Look to the part of fortune. If you were born under a previous new moon, you're going to look to the ascendant first. Okay? So if the new moon precedes the birth, start from the ascendant. The ascendant must be aspected by any of the rulers of the 5 dignities or the moon. Okay? Now, if it's a previous full moon, and we're gonna look at all that. I mean, we may not need to get to it, but we're gonna look at it. If it's a previous full moon, then you're going to use the part of fortune. If the part of fortune is in the degree of the ascendant, it will be the Hyleg. Otherwise, it needs to be in an angle or succeeding house and aspected by any of the rulers of the 5 dignities. Now, I think that it should also be aspected. Matter of fact, it has to be, because the only way you can find the Alcocoden is if there's an aspecting planet. Now, if neither the ascendant or the part of fortune is the Hyleg, then you would go to the degree of the new or full moon. All right? So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go to the charts that I have, and I'll tell you what I'm looking at. I'm looking at Layla first. Layla Kabiri first, which is 5 degrees of Aquarius. So see if you can find that chart. Okay, so look at that. The sun's right on the ascendant. Let's see if that's going to be interesting. Okay, so the first thing we would do, this is a daytime chart, so the first thing we would look at, and first of all, let's figure out what the 5 planets who rule this degree. The sun is in the 2nd degree of Aquarius. That gives us Saturn by domicile, Saturn by triplicity, Mercury by term, and Venus by face. Saturn, it's moving away, and it's not really, and it's out of sign, so I'm not going to give it. Mercury, no, not Mercury. Or Saturn, nope, not Saturn, not Mercury, not Venus. Okay, so I would say, no, this is not the Hyleg. Let's look to the moon. The moon is in the 10th house, but she's in a masculine sign. Is she aspected by her? No, she's in a masculine sign, but she's in a masculine quarter too. The moon is not the Hyleg. See where I'm going? See how I'm doing it? Okay, do we have a previous new moon or a previous full moon? The moon is moving to the conjunction of the sun, right? So she's waning. So that means there's a previous full moon. So for every single sign, we give 2 days. So Scorpio is 2, 4, 6, 8. Now this would take us 8, 10, right? Because really this probably happened when the sun was in Capricorn. So that would say to me 10 degrees. 21 degrees of Cancer is this person's degree of previous. Is that right? Mine says Layla Kabiri on here. Yeah, Layla Kabiri's. Wait, it says Layla Kabiri. Wait, did you give me? Yeah, you gave me your. Isn't this right, Layla Kabiri? Sun in Aquarius on the ascendant. Moon's in Scorpio. You're right. Thank you. I thought it was in Sagittarius. You're absolutely right. Moon's in Scorpio. You're right. Now, then is Mars contacting it? No, but the Venus is. Let's see. So 30 degrees of this could actually be it. Now, the thing is, thank you. Thank you so much. Venus is aspecting. So is it one of the five? It's a water sign and it's daytime. Yes, it is. Okay, it's water and it's day. So Scorpio, Mars, Venus, it's a daytime chart for triplicity. Third degree, Mars with a 30th degree Saturn, and Venus again for face. So she has face and triplicity. So yes, so it looks like the Hyleg in this case is the moon. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for correcting me there. So it looks like the Hyleg is the moon here. I thought it was going to maybe be the part of fortune because of the how close, but yes, it is. That's right. So the Hyleg. Now remember, the Hyleg isn't telling us about success or anything like that. It just says, yes, you're going to live. yes, you're going to live beyond childbirth. Yes, you're going to live beyond 12. So it's not necessarily like, although to be honest, the jury is out, as I like to say, because who knows? I haven't really looked at the Hyleg as a specific thing, so to speak.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I didn't think Moon in Scorpio was like a good position necessarily. I just vibe with it more.
I don't think it's a great position, right? Because it's in the
no, it's not.
And it's in fall. It's garbage.
Yeah, but traditionally, I'm kind of messed up. Yeah.
But so which makes me wonder if I'd want to use it, right? So I don't.
Can you just opt out of using it then, though?
Well, we're gonna look at a chart where I do that. Because we're going to look at a chart where I do that because I think it's a stronger. Once again, you remember I think it was last week or the week before, or actually it was whenever we talked about Lord of the Genitor. And remember I talked about how whenever you're looking at something to sustain something, you're looking for the planet in the best condition. Mm-hmm. I think that this might be a similar situation where. You see what I mean? Where it would be the kind of thing where, although if there's nothing else, so now that we know what the previous degree of the prevention is, let's just go further and see if something else works better. So there isn't anything that works better. 5 degrees.
Yeah, I don't think so. I think because traditionally too, that MC conjunction is kind of a big deal.
It's a big deal, but remember what I've said. Their significators can be mixed. And so what can happen is the 10th house is a great position, but the moon in Cancer is a shit position, right? So that's a mixed influence. So the thing is we can't just say, we don't want to be like the modern astrologers and say, hey, it's in the 10th house, that must mean it's good, right?
I don't think it means it's good. I think it means it's part of my personality. Yeah, like externally. I think people can tell that I'm Scorpio.
See, but so the thing is, and of course, at the same time that I say it's a shit position, anything can be made to work in the natal chart, right? Anything can be made to work. So this is only a shit position on paper. You see what I'm saying?
Oh no, I'm not worried. I'd rather see worst case scenario and then work my way back from there.
But here's a question though. Have you dealt with a lot of illness? Now, look, also the moon's the ruler of the 6th house.
Have I dealt with illness?
Yeah.
I mean, mentally, sure. Not anything super chronic physically.
Remember, we talked about the moon and Mercury and infirmities of the soul.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that's a possibility.
I would say I dealt with depression for a while, for sure.
Okay.
Yes, I would say that. And just like not like a wrecked mental life, but like it's hard to kind of get out of my head. But I always attributed that more to the stellium.
Okay. Okay. So, I mean, but not physical, but see, we're also thinking about the physical life, right? Because because the Alcocoden, because look, we still have to get to the Alcocoden. By the way, so your Hyleg is the moon, your Alcocoden is Venus. Okay. So
Which is combust.
Oh my God, I just read something which said that an Alcocoden, Venus cannot be an Alcocoden can't be a combust planet. Thank you.
So I'm just
okay, we're gonna come back to your chart. We're gonna come back to your chart because we need to revisit the Lord of the Genitor in this in this, because one of the things they say is if the planet that's expected to be the Alcocoden can't do it, then the Lord of the Genitor can possibly do it, or another planet can maybe do it. I'm still kind of figuring this out. This is stuff that I've really shall I say, Diana is next. This is stuff that I've really avoided. Like I haven't really wanted to learn this stuff at all, except for knowing what the Hyleg is.
Yeah.
So I've even like this week I resisted kind of preparing. Okay, so we're looking at Diana, another Aquarius rising, 27 degrees of Aquarius rising. And so it's a nighttime chart. So we're going to look at the moon first. Now the moon's in a succeeding house and she's in her own sign. Now, one of the things that they say is that, let's first look and see what the 5 planets are. So 26 degrees of Cancer, it's moon, Jupiter, it's nighttime, so it's Mars, it's Saturn, and it's moon. So one of the things that they say is that if the sun is in Aries or Leo, and the moon is in Taurus or Cancer, and one of their 5 doesn't aspect them, they can be both the Hyleg and the Alcocoden. That's the case in this chart.
So it's both? It is
okay. Both the Hyleg and the Alcocoden.
Okay, interesting.
And if you look at the sheet, go to the sheet and go to the second page, I think it is. Oh, wait, where is it? Because I did put it in there because I wanted to make sure. I don't see it now. Okay, never mind, sorry. But wait a minute. They set up the planet in 3 or 4 places, beginning the rule of the term. All right, but no, there definitely is a thing that said if the moon or the sun, and I thought I put it in here to make sure that you all had it. If the moon or the sun are in those, then they are. So you, in this case, the moon is also the Alcocoden. All right, so we're going to move. I've got Anne Louise next. Anne Louise at 29. Oh, another late degrees of Sag. Oh, that's really close to my degree of Sag. I'm 27 degrees of Sag. So 30 degrees of Sagittarius, it's daytime. So the first thing we look at is the sun. Now the sun is in, I guess this would be considered the 7th house. The sun is in the 7th house and he's in a masculine sign. He's in his own sign. So that would be a very good particular spot for him. Now, let's see if Mars rules the term or the face. 18, 19, no, Mercury and Jupiter. Okay, so that means that in this case, the sun is also the Alcocoden and the Hyleg in this chart. Interesting how many people have their Hylegs close to because he actually talks about the head of the dragon. Okay, Maria is next. Maria, I just met a girl named Maria. Okay, so it's nighttime. We start with the moon. She's in the 9th house of Gemini. Okay, then we go to the sun. He's in the 3rd house. No. Then we go to what is it? Oh, it's a new moon chart, right? Because it's about to be a full moon. So we start with the part of fortune. The part of fortune isn't on here, so we're going to find it. Oh, it's 180 minus 2, or 180 plus 2. So 12 degrees of Aries. Oh, you're welcome. Oh, shit, I keep doing that. 12 degrees of Aries, 12 degrees of Aries. Okay, so 12 degrees of Aries. Ooh, look, 8 degrees of Leo, and it's nighttime. So indeed there is. So let's just be sure that there's not another planet that's stronger. 12 degrees Mars, not quite strong, not quite close enough. But he's stronger than Jupiter. So, and they talked about this. They talked about even if it's not as close, if it's stronger, that you would use it. Okay. So there are all these. I think one of the reasons that so much of this went out of date or went out of usage is because there's some really complicated rules for it. Look at how we've just started, and we're getting into all these kind of weird, like, what? And I'm thinking about all these exceptions, and there are exceptions that I didn't put in the sheet because I thought, they're not going to show up, and here they're all fucking showing up. So one of the things that they say is, now what did I say? 12 degrees of Aries is the part of fortune. So the part of fortune is the Hyleg in this chart. Now, what we have is Jupiter, who is the triplicity ruler for fire by night. It's a nighttime chart. And then we also have Mars, who is the domicile ruler. We've also got the Sun, who's the exaltation ruler, right? So all three of these planets, I won't say, now what we would usually be looking at is we'd be looking at who's aspecting with their moiety, right? And right now, the only one really is Jupiter, right? Jupiter's moiety. Jupiter has, 4.5 degrees of moiety. He's within 4 degrees, right? So he's the only one that's within moiety. But Bonatti has said that if there is a planet that is stronger, if you have more than one planet that's aspecting the Hyleg, and there's a planet that's stronger, but it's not as close, use that planet anyway. So in this case, it looks like Mars would be the Alcocoden. Okay, so I'm gonna say here that the part of fortune is the Hyleg, and Mars is the Alcocoden. Okay, now those are the 4 charts that I have. Lily said Lily's in her car, so she wasn't able to do that. And then Fatima, I don't know what's going on with Fatima, but if you want to put your stuff up, please do. Oh, Jupiter is Lord of the Genitor here. Oh, here's Fatima. Yay. Oh, Fatima. Now, Fatima, I need your email address, I think. And what about Constanza? Is she still with us or maybe not? Okay, I guess it looks like she isn't with us anymore. Okay. All right, everybody, click on Fatima's chart. We're going to do Fatima now. She's from Pakistan, born in Pakistan. All right. So it's daytime. And so we start first. So this one works. The Sun is the Hyleg. The Sun is in the 9th house. Oh, no, he's not the Hyleg. Why? Because he's in a feminine sign. He's in a feminine sign, even though he's with Mercury, and it's not within the moiety, but that would have worked had he been in a masculine sign in the 9th house. The Sun would work. What about the Moon? Well, I think the Moon kind of works. Let's see. Oh, and you know what? It's daytime, so it's got Venus and Mercury, and Venus is the closer. But this is the same thing. Where Venus is closer, it's within her moiety that the Moon is applying to Venus, which could make her the Alcocoden, but Venus is fallen, and Mercury, even though he's further away, is exalted and in domicile. So, but you know what? But look, Mercury is combust, so he can't be the Alcocoden. It looks like Venus is the Alcocoden in this chart. Isn't this interesting how weird this shit gets? It's so interesting. Well, I mean, nothing is necessarily supposed to be straightforward just because we wish it were, right? We always wish the shit were straightforward, but it almost never is. And so that's kind of why I keep saying to you, hey, it's all about the ambiguity. It's all about the ambiguity. What you really want is to be able to straddle the ambiguity so that you can feel comfortable coming up with some kind of concrete statement. Because the more you want your data to be concrete, the less you'll be, the less comfortable you'll be with just trying to surf and see what's going on. Right. But so, and the thing is about all of this is that, this might be, I might look at it again and say, oh, well, maybe it isn't. But from what I'm looking at, this looks like it very much, I would say moon is the high leg, Venus. Oh, wait, the moon can't be the high leg, right? The moon can't be the high leg. Oh, wait, she can, because she's in the 8th house. She's in the succeeding house. Okay, and she's in a feminine sign. So yes, the moon is the high leg and Venus is the Alcocoden. So, and you know what? What's happened with me is that I have many, many, many times, like I've been looking at, like I looked at a bunch of charts for this. And as a result, I looked at this chart, I looked at these charts, and I could have sworn that I came to one idea of what the high leg was. And then I looked at it again and I was like, oh, wait, no, that's not the high leg. It's this one. So, this is newish, kind of newish for me, or I'm kind of coming back to it after a long time. And it's just a little bit less easy to come to than what we might think. Now, we had one chart. What was it? Was it Layla? Yeah, it was Layla who we looked at, who I didn't like because, who brought to the attention the combust Venus, who would otherwise be the Alcocoden. So
yeah, it was me.
Right, that was you, right? So what I would do is, in this particular case, is I would actually find the 5 hylegical places and find the planet who has the most dignity out of all of them. So the first one, and I want you to all write this down as well and just do this with me. The first one is 2 degrees of Aries, 2 degrees of Aries. The second is 30 degrees of Sagittarius.
30 Sag, okay.
The third is 6 degrees of Aquarius.
Oh, okay, yeah.
The fourth is 5 degrees of Sagittarius.
Yep.
And the sixth is, okay, what did we say, 21
You
degrees?
just did 5 Sag. Yeah, okay, sorry.
Yeah, 5 Sag, 21 Cancer. Okay, everybody, so everybody, we're gonna do this we're gonna do this one together, and then you all are gonna do now some of you already have yours, like Maria already remembered that her Lord of the Genitor was Jupiter. So 2 degrees of Aquarius, what is that? Saturn, Jupiter, Saturn, nothing, Saturn, Jupiter, Mars.
We aren't counting stuff like part of fortune, right? Like straight up planets.
We're looking, what we're doing is what you all need for what we're doing right now is the essential planetary dignity chart.
Okay, got it. That's what you're saying, Zach. Okay.
We're getting a compound out mutant. What we're doing is we're doing the Lord of the Genitor, which is a compound out mutant.
Oh yeah, I'm Saturn, not the Yang. I could have told you that.
Oh, do you know what it is?
No, I'm just saying the chances are all of my planets, except for one, are in like Saturn positions. Like,
oh, well, we'll see. Well, it's all. And one of the interesting things is everything is Aquarius, Jupiter, Aquarius, Sagittarius, and then Cancer. So Jupiter might end up being the thing, right? Because Jupiter has important stuff in all of those. Now, is this
that's
the
my only good planet? Actually, it's a diurnal chart. Just after I was born just after sunrise. Yeah.
Okay, good. Thank you. All right. Jupiter. Yeah, that's right. You're right over there. So.
Yeah, which I thought would have been a good thing, but it's not a good thing.
Oh, I mean, it can be. Sure. Sun, Sagittarius. I'm just going to 1 second. Jupiter and Moon, Jupiter, and Venus. Okay. All right. Going to the dignity chart for 2 degrees Aquarius. It's Saturn, nothing, Saturn, Jupiter, Mars. Going to 30 degrees of Sagittarius. It's Jupiter, nothing, Jupiter, Mars, Saturn. All right. Going to 6 degrees of Aquarius. It's Saturn, nothing, Saturn, Mercury, Venus. And then 5 degrees of Sag, Jupiter, nothing, Sun. Oh, sorry about that. 30 degrees of Sagittarius should be Sun, not Jupiter, for triplicity. So it should go Jupiter, nothing, Sun, Mars, Saturn. And so same thing with this one. Jupiter, nothing, Sun, Jupiter, Mercury. And last but not least, Moon, Jupiter, Venus, 21. Jupiter, Moon. So it's going to be Saturn or Jupiter. Saturn, 5, 3, 5, 8, 9, 14, 19. 14, 17. Anything else? Okay, so 17 for Saturn. Let's go to Jupiter, 2, 7, 11, 12, 14, 18, 20. It's Jupiter. Okay, so the Lord of the Genitor is Jupiter. We're only doing for the particular, so let's look at it and see what's going on. And there he is. I think that's a good one to have for, let's make it an executive decision to make the Jupiter the Alcocoden. Okay? Handle of your bucket, indeed. All right, so so I know that Maria said she had hers. Everybody else had their Alcocoden. So I'm going to go back to the sheet now, and we're going to look at the stuff around the Alcocoden. Okay, so once again, as you know, the Alcocoden is the planet that was aspecting. Remember that in order for there to be a Hyleg at all, there has to be a planet, excuse me, that aspects the Hyleg. So after you determine the Hyleg and the Alcocoden, you're able to determine the years of the native's life. Oh, okay, so this is what I need to do. I now need to put these years. Okay. All right, this is what I want you to do. I want you to put the Chaldean order. Do you remember what that is? Saturn, Jupiter, Mars, and do it going down. Saturn, Jupiter, Mars, Sun, Venus, Mercury, Moon. This part you're not going to be able to see. Okay, so next to Saturn, you're going to put there are 3 columns, or you can just put 3 different columns. So the first column is minor, the second column is media, and the third column is major. Just for you to know. Okay, so for Saturn, minor is 30, media 43.5, major 57. Jupiter next, minor 12, media 45.5, major 79. Mars, 15 minor, media 40.5, major 66. Sun, 19, media 69.5, major 120. Minor for Venus, 8, media 45, major 82. Minor for Mercury, 20, media 48, major 76. Moon, minor 25, media 66.5, major 108. These are the years allotted to the planets. And generally, if you have, oh, well, you'll see from the sheet. If they are given by the Alcocoden, which you should be able to be plain, if they are given to you by another, you will see whether the years of the Alcocoden are equal to the lesser, middle, greater, or greatest years, which occurred to very few or not many. Of course, the greatest years, I didn't even tell you what those were. The greatest years for Saturn are 256. The greatest years for the Sun are 1,461. So you're not going to need those. You're only going to use the greatest years. And you will see in which of those years the Hyleg may come. Oh, okay, got it. Because, okay, so what you're going to figure out here, okay, where is it? Here it is. This same, when it says on knowing the length of the life of the native. After this, we look to the place of this Almutin for knowing the years of the native. If the mutant were oriental and in an angle, and we'll use the same thing for the Alcocoden in my opinion here. What he's talking about is if the Lord of the Genitor is being used, which in Layla's case it is. Okay, so what he says is if the mutant were oriental and in an angle along with this, remember now that we know that oriental means it's left to the left of the sun. It will rise and set before the sun. If it were at a time, remember that's something we talked about a long time ago, which is if a diurnal planet is above the horizon by day in a masculine sign, or below the horizon by night in a masculine sign, or if a nocturnal planet is above the horizon by night in a feminine sign, except for Mars, right? Because Mars is a male planet. And if so remember, so there's two things. Let's look at this again for just 1 second, because there is Hyleg, which is when a planet is in so let's say, when a nocturnal planet is above the horizon by night or below the horizon by day. Right, so that's just if, so for it, and what are the nocturnal planets? The nocturnal planets are Moon, Venus, Mars, and the diurnal planets are Sun, Saturn, Jupiter, right? So, and vice versa. So we want nocturnal planets above the horizon by night and below the horizon by day, and we want diurnal planets below the horizon by night and above the horizon by day, right? So, and if something is in Heim or Highs, or I'm, like that says, then that means Sun, Saturn, and Jupiter are above the horizon and in masculine signs by day and below by night. And same thing, Moon, or rather Moon, Venus are above the horizon by night in female signs, and Mars in male signs, and vice versa. Okay, so that's what that means there, in case you had forgotten. We have talked about it. Any of the aforementioned dignities, which are house, exaltation, triplicity, and face, and if it were in the ascendant or in the 10th or in its own Heim, so if it's in the 1st or 10th, then it would get its major years. Okay, then it will give the major years. And if it was succeedent or in the 11th, in any of the foresaid dignities or free from impediments, it will give its middle years. Now, the thing is that most people are living beyond the middle years. So I say, this is what I say that we naturally give the Alcocoden its major years all the time. So if you have Jupiter as an Alcocoden, the amount of years that it's given you is 79. If you've got, we had somebody that had Venus, that's 82. We had somebody who had Saturn, I have Saturn, that's 57. We have somebody that has Jupiter, we already said Jupiter, but etc. So that's why I've given you those numbers, because to find the Alcocoden, right, you know what your Alcocoden is. So some of you have Moon as Alcocoden, so that gives 108. And I think Anne Louise had the Sun, so that gives you 120. So the next thing you would do is you would basically either add years or take away years. And you can see, now this is why, like I say, so much of this has fallen out of usage. It's because it's really quite involved. And like, I didn't even put most of what's in there and all the kind of considerations. And like I showed you, there were all these considerations that I thought, oh, they're not going to show up. They showed up. And I was like, oh my God, there's all this kind of weird ambiguity around it. So know what they've done. They basically said, hey, if things are in an Oriental house or if things are angular, that's going to be really good. They're going to get major. If it's succeeding, they're going to get their middle. But that can also mean that years can be added. And so I'm going to look at a chart here. Let's look at Layla, for instance. Oh, Layla, oh, shite. What happened? Oh, fuck, okay, never mind. Let's look at Fatima.
Yeah, I was gonna say, make it easier on yourself.
Yeah, no, let's look at Fatima. Because, so Fatima we have this Venus, remember? So we have this Venus as it. And so this Venus in fall might not give all 82 years. Now, this doesn't mean you're gonna die early, but it's just, see, this is the reason that maybe also some of this stuff came out about disrepair. Do we really want to know how long we're going to live? We've got people that are on this fucking Reddit thing that, they hear that maybe they might not get married before they're 25 and they have anxiety for months, right? So think about how much anxiety we can have if I say, oh, well, it looks like you're not going to live for very long. And part of the thing is, I didn't really want to use your charts for this part. I wanted to, because I really don't want to do this with you all. I wanted to do it with charts of other people. And so it kind of pisses me off. I wanted to use, and there were some cool charts that I had. There's some cool charts that I had to work with. The Billie Holiday chart and the Judy Garland chart. The Midwest chart, all of those are places where the Alcocoden, where the Alcocoden really does come out to be about the amount of time that they made. As a matter of fact, you know what? Hold on one second, because I really do want to use the Billie Holiday chart. Hold on one second, and we're just going to look at it. I'm going to give you the link to it. I feel more comfortable doing this. I don't want to work with you all's charts talking about death. Okay, click onto that link. That's Billie Holiday. Okay, Billie Holiday is the reason I became a singer instead of an actor. I was one of the most important personalities kind of in my early life. Oh, I mean, but I just don't want to do it generally. I don't think it's something that we should, I personally don't want to, I don't think that's something we should be gallivanting about, this kind of thing. I mean, it's interesting as an exercise, but since we're using it as an exercise, I'd rather use it on someone who's already dead. You know what I mean? I would prefer to do it with somebody who's already dead. That makes more sense for me. Okay, so, and yeah, it just feels a little too weird. Yeah, it's not. Yeah, even if you're willing, and of course, and we could be wrong, and you could live to a ripe old age of 1,000, whatever. But I just don't want to deal with it. But I do want to show you the efficacy of it. Okay, let's do this whole thing for Billie Holiday, and then I'm going to go back to the sheet for just a second, and then I'm going to come back to here. So. It's nighttime, so the first thing we look for is the moon. The moon is in the 12th house, so we know that that's not going to be the case. Then the next thing we look at is the sun. Now, the sun is really pretty close to the third. It's kind of in the second, but the second isn't one of the places where the sun can be Hyleg, even though it's exalted, so I wouldn't say so. Now, I know that the part of fortune is right here. The part of fortune is like 26 degrees of Aries or something like that. The next one would be, it's moon, the moon's coming to the sun, so it's a proventional chart, right? So it's a proventional chart, so it's a previous full moon, so we would look to the part of fortune. The part of fortune is at 26 degrees of Aries. Now, the part of fortune could possibly work, but the sun's not really in moiety. The sun's at 16, The part of fortune is at 26. I know this because I was looking at it earlier. And so technically it could work as the Hyleg, but it's just a little out of bounds for it to really be right. And there's no other planet that aspects it that is part of its part of the 5 dignities. So I go next to the ascendant, and is it? No, what was? Oh, wait a second! It is the part of fortune. Sorry about that. It is the part of fortune because the part of fortune is at 26, and Saturn is at 26. Saturn is the term ruler. I'm sorry about that because I don't have any things on it. This fucking thing, I can't believe it. Okay, Saturn is the term ruler for 27 degrees of Aries, right? I have my moon at 27 degrees of Aries, and Saturn is the term ruler. So Saturn is the ruler of, Saturn is the Alcocoden. Now, the Arabs always started with the term ruler. And if you remember when we talked about solar returns, that we used the term ruler, we directed with the term ruler. Remember, we did directions using the term ruler, and that thing was called the dispositor or the distributor. And we looked at that in the chart, in the solar return chart, which is why they started originally with it, because they were already in the habit of using directions with real ascension with the terms, directing the terms through the zodiac. And so that's why they would often start with that. Let's see, I'm checking the U-turn record. Oh, no, did I not? I thought I did. Yeah, it's recording. Yeah. No, I definitely did. Shoot, but thank you. Yeah, thank you. All right, so as I said, Saturn, 26 degrees of Gemini, part of fortune, 26 degrees of Aries. Saturn is the Alcocoden. The Hyleg is the part of fortune. Saturn is the Alcocoden. So one of the things that they say is, now I'm going to go to the sheet, and I'm going under, it should be the last page, or no, right before the last page, right before it says on Caput Draconis and its cauda. Caput means head. Okay, so it says, you will see whether the planet to which the Alcocoden is joined or which aspect it is a benefic, and by what aspect it is aspected. Because if the aspecting planet aspects the Alcocoden with a trine or a sextile, and we're a benefic, and we're strong and fortunate, it will add its minor years to it, and so many months as are equal to his middle years. So what we're now looking at is we're looking at the planets who aspect the Alcocoden, right? So somebody here has sun as Alcocoden. Somebody here has moon. Two people have Jupiter. No, one person has Jupiter, and another person, I forget what the other one was. And Lily, if you're still with us, you might be in a situation where Venus might be the Alcocoden, because there was something where he talked about that a planet that's on the ascendant also participates with the Hyleg, if Lily is still with us. Okay, but also can you see here, if the aspecting planet were a malefic and aspects him with a square or an opposition or were corporally joined to him, he diminishes the years given by the Alcocoden according to the number of his minor years. What is this? Okay, Yuli, great. According to his minor years. So we want that. And then look at this other part. Mercury is changeable because if he were with planets who add years, he adds years to the native according to the number of his minor years. But if he were with planets who diminish, he diminishes them by the same number. Now, Billie Holiday's chart, going back to it, Mars and Mercury are respectively at 22 and 24 degrees of Pisces. Oh, okay, good. That's Lily's chart. We're gonna come to Lily's chart in a second. Let me just finish with Billie Holiday. I'll show you what's going on here. Okay, so if you look at the columns that you made with the Chaldean order, Saturn as Alcocoden gets 57 years of his major. but he's squared by Mars, which would subtract years, right? What did it just say? It just said if there's a square, opposition, or conjunction of a malefic, then it's taking away years from its minor years. However, notice the next thing it says. However, if he were fortunate and strong, he diminishes the number of years given by the Alcocoden by 1/3 part of his minor years. So because Mars is so close to the Jupiter, and he's in the sign of his triplicity, because he's with Jupiter and he's in the sign of the triplicity, I'm only going to subtract 1/3 of Mars's minor years. So, as I said, Saturn gets 57 years. Mars's minor years are 15. I'm going to divide that by 3 and subtract 5. That would be and subtract 5, which would give us 52. Minus 5. That's correct. All right. Also, though, because Mercury is with a planet that takes years away, and Mercury's not in good condition. Mercury's in shitty condition because he's in Pisces, and he's with a malefic. We're going to take all of his years. Mercury's years are 20, so that means 25 years minus 57. Is that right? 25 minus 57. 25 minus 57 is 42. Billie Holiday died at 44. Now, here's the thing. The main thing that they say, and one of the other reason that a lot of these techniques have gone out of use, is because they use primary directions and directions by right ascension to really nail it down. And so what the things they say is that, hey, the Alcocoden might say this many years, but what you really want to do is you want to direct the Hyleg to its either first conjunction with the malefic or its opposition or its square, and it's closest to the amount of years. So let's say we've got Saturn and it's 57 years. And it's like this chart. It's Saturn, it says 57 years, but we've got Mars subtracting 5, we've got Mercury subtracting 20, right? So that gives us to 44. But directing the Hyleg takes us to 44 for her to die. That's what they're saying. That it can actually kill you off earlier or later, but it needs to be somewhere around that time that you come to around the Hyleg, around the Alcocoden. Now that is, that's kind of what, neither here nor there. Neither here nor there, but that's my thing around this whole thing with the Alcocoden is I'd be much more interested in looking at it. I'd be much more interested in looking at all of this stuff with the primary directions or directions by right ascension, which I don't quite know how to do yet. And I was hoping Layla Akbar was going to be here today because she's the math person, and I was hoping she and I could get together at some point. If there's somebody else who's good with math and kind of advanced math that wants to kind of help me to figure this out, it might be fun to work together to do that. And then I will create a class teaching us how to do it. Okay, so as we can see, like I said, using this Alcocoden thing, that's where we ended up. The same thing, like when I looked at Judy Garland, a similar thing happened. It took her to 45. She died at 47. Now let's look at Lily's chart. It was the last link that was shared. It should be 0 degrees of Cancer with the Venus right on it. Now, it's a nighttime chart. So the moon, obviously the moon is the Hyleg here. It's a nighttime chart. So actually Mars would be the Alcocoden, it looks like. Mars would be the Alcocoden, although Venus could be, but she's not as close. See, Mars is closer, but she's a little bit stronger. Anything else that could do it? No. So it needs to be either Venus or the Mars. Now, since the Mars is weaker than the Venus, she's in her triplicity. It's nighttime. It's nighttime. He's really the triplicity ruler, but she technically is in triplicity. and he's detrimented in Taurus, it's going to be one of those two. I'd say go with Venus since she's on the ascendant. She's in the stronger position. She's also she's not detrimented at all. I'd say let's use Venus as the Alcocoden, which would give you 82 years. So from this, we would then look to see if anything is going on with Venus. We've got this opposition to the Uranus, but that's not going to subtract any years. So we would pretty much just go with the Alcocoden as it is. Now, what I want to do is, I had not intended this to be an extremely long session today. I was expecting this. I'm leaving Mexico and coming back to the States for a little bit more than a month next week. Next week is my last full week here. So I've been kind of trying to get stuff taken care of. So I didn't really do a whole lot. This was pretty much all that I did of this for right now. What's that, Layla? You all right?
What are you doing here?
Oh, she's not moving. Okay, so what I want to do is I want to open to questions right now, if anybody has any other questions. And then I've got two other charts that I want to see if I can pull up. Okay, I'm putting in another link. Okay, click that. This is Mae West. Mae West is a fascinating, I bring up all these people who were really major parts of the 20th century. Like, some of these people that I brought up, and especially for those of you who are not American, you might be like, who are these people? Like, when I talk about Leontyne Price, and I guess I haven't really, or Luciano Pavarotti or some of these other people, but like Leontyne Price is historically one of the most important people in opera because she is the first Black prima donna. And Mae West is extremely important to the 20th century. Mae West is the first kind of sexual maverick in public life. And she was a famous movie star. She became in her late 30s. Matter of fact, she got to Hollywood when she was 39, and she became this humongous box office smash. She wrote all of her own material and was always really racy and suggestive, and she became like this cultural icon. Even when I was a kid, Mae West was still something really, really important. And I think she's really a useful person to look at. For a lot of women now as well. She was extremely sexually liberated. She went to jail because she wrote plays for Broadway that dealt with homosexuality, adultery, prostitution. In the 20s, she wrote a play called Sex, and it scandalized Hollywood, and the cops came and raided it and took her to jail. And of course, that created more publicity, and she became the toast of Broadway. And I'm just... Mae West is an amazing character, really an amazing character, and lived to a ripe old age of, maybe 90 or 84? Wait, how old did she live to be? 1 second. Mae West. Mae West lived to be, I think, 82 or 83, something like that. But she had a long life. She was rich as fuck. She owned most of Hollywood. She died in 80, so she died at 87. So she owned most of Hollywood. They said that she would go riding with her chauffeur, and she'd say, "Oh, what's that?" She'd see some property. She'd be like, "Oh, have them buy that for me." She owned most of Hollywood, most of Los Angeles. Just an amazing person. Fascinating person. Okay, it's nighttime. So we've got the moon in a succeeding house in Cancer. So this could very well be the Hyleg. Except, you know what? I don't like it. I like the sun better. It could be, but the sun's in an angle and he's being aspected by Jupiter. The sun's at like 25, Jupiter's at 24. And so that could make the Jupiter it could definitely make the Jupiter the Alcocoden, but even by himself, it could make the Sun the Alcocoden. Now the Sun gets how many points if it's him by himself? He gets 120, and the Moon gets 108, right? So either of these planets are getting anything. Let's see if anything separates. We know that the Jupiter is trining the Sun, but he's retrograde. So that would just add years. So we know that that's probably not the case. It doesn't look like anything is really, where's the Mercury? The only thing that could be happening is the Mercury could be sextiling the Moon. Yep, the Mercury's sextiling the Moon, but not that big a deal, right? Because Mercury's strong. So we've got really strong Hyleg indicators, both that indicate living more than 60 or 70 years, and are both of which are untrammeled. Both of which are highly untrammeled or untrampled or unimpeded and give no problem. So she lived to a good ripe age of 87. She didn't make it to 108 or whatever, but it would be interesting to see what happens. So more than likely, right, if we used 108 or we used 120, we would be directing the Hyleg, which in this case would be either the Moon or the Sun. We would be directing the Hyleg to some planet that takes us the closest to 108 or 120 years, and that would probably show us when the life would end. Okay, so I'm finished with my session for right now. You can take this time to ask me anything you want. If you want to continue, we have until 4 o'clock. You can ask me whatever you want. If you want me to go back over what we talked about, if you have questions about what we talked about, that's great. If you have questions about something further back, about something we've learned and that you've never quite understood, this is the time. We've got 23 minutes or we can end here, or we have 23 minutes where you can ask me whatever the hell you want. Good question. I think it's probably very accurate with the directions. I think primary directions are the missing piece, and I think primary directions would make this technique come to life. I think as it is, it's kind of, what the hell? What are we looking at? Well, how do we do? It's also amorphous and nebulous. But I think it was the other Layla that asked, I don't ever see anything about transits. Why did they really use transits much? Because they were using primary directions, and those were accurate as fuck. They were using primary directions. They were directing things by a right ascension. They were using perfection. They were using the solar return. They were using direction, directing the terms. So they had all of these other ways of kind of using these things. I don't know. That's a good question. There are courses. There is a guy that has a course on primary directions. It's pretty involved. It's pretty involved, which is why I've never really kind of sat down and learned it. I'm good with math, but I'm not so good that I want to get really, really deep with that I wanted to get deep with that. Although I did, and when I tried, I couldn't understand it. I don't know. That's a good question. It would be good to kind of look into that, and maybe that's something just to research and come back to us with, because I've really never used it, and I've always wanted to, and I've been looking around for. What I think Chris Warnock may have even a primary directions course. I'm not sure, but isn't it that guy that does the degree theory, Stoyanovich, Nicholas Stoyanovich? I think Stoyanovich has one. Oh, did he die? then I'm sure, oh, that's why you have to do it through his wife. Because that's right, because I just remember somebody saying, oh, you know what, Stoyanovich, but you have to get it through his wife. So if he does have a course, then the wife is still doing it. Just same thing with Robert Zoller. Zoller died and Diana kind of continued on with his stuff. Yeah, so see if there's somebody else, another Eastern European or Russian that also had one, but might have been Stoyanovich. That might be who I'm thinking of. What else? Anybody else? Come on. I know that some of you have been like, oh, I wanted to ask this question, or I never quite understood, blah, blah, blah. Literally, we can go back to video 1. I don't care. Anything. I mean, it's kind of good. If you all don't have any questions, that means I guess I'm a relatively decent teacher, and I've been pretty clear, and you all have gotten, and also you all are good students and have kind of gotten the information. So. Well, that's a really good point. This thing about remedies. So, okay, so the remedies, let's just talk about that for a second. So I've mainly been, basically it's more Vedic. That's right. It was originally more Vedic. It's in the Western tradition, it's an aspect of what we call planetary magic. And if you're interested in learning about that, then the person to go to is Christopher Warnock. He's like the master on the planetary magic thing. And he's got a course, and it's cheap. It's only $200 or something like that. It's not expensive. But he's got a course on planetary magic. And basically planetary magic is all about using electional astrology to, choosing an electional astrology to use a chart, to find a chart for, to make talismans or whatever other kind of magic that you would use. But one of the things that he brings up is that if you've got planets that are in bad condition, you do not want to make talismans for them. Now that's kind of one of the things that's different about Vedic. Vedic is very much about like, this planet's in bad condition, do this. But the Western astrology is like, if you do this, if you make a talisman for Mercury and your Mercury is in bad condition, you'll just strengthen the bad stuff. You'll just give him more opportunity to bring bad shit. So what you really need to do is something called planetary charity. And I would go to Christopher Warnock. I would put Christopher Warnock's name. I put it in the chat there, and planetary charity into the box, and basically into the Google search. And basically what that is you propitiate. So instead of honoring, you propitiate. You say, hey, things are bad, help me, please. Oh, things are fucked up. Your energies are fucked up on my chart, please help me. And you do that by, let's say Mercury, let's use Mercury as if Mercury is in Pisces, squared Mars, opposing Saturn or something like that, or just in Pisces or Sagittarius or something. What you would do is you would, on a Wednesday, which is Mercury's day, you would maybe take $80 or $8 or what's 8 times 8? $64 because his number is 8. And you would, during the Mercury hour, you would maybe go to a school and you would give $8 to 8 students. You could do something like that. Or you could give $64 to the school for 8 weeks to help them with supplies or something, because Mercury rules students and children and schools. Or you could do it to a daycare. You could go to a daycare. Or if it's the moon that's screwed up, you could go to a food bank and donate to a food bank. Or you could give to a pregnant woman or to a mother, right? Or if it's Saturn, you give to a beggar. You give to a beggar. If it's Mars, you give to a soldier. You give to a veteran. That kind of thing. Jupiter, you give to a bishop. I know I have something I want to give the bishop a kick in the rear. But yeah, so you those are the kinds of things that you would do to propitiate when you have a negative in the chart. So when you have essentially undignified, essentially debilitated or something like that. But look it up on, Christopher has a very specific and a detailed kind of a thing about how to work with it.
Hey, now I feel like a major idiot. Moon is related to food?
Of course. The moon rules the
Okay,
sky.
because you were asking about my health earlier. I've had like eating issues my entire life.
There we go, girl.
And
Moon
it
rules the
conjuncts
stomach.
my March. I've worked in the hospitality industry too. Like I work in food.
Oh, moon is hospitality. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So do you remember when we talked about, were you with us when we did the soul? Because because we talked about how the moon is the desire nature and the appetite. How the moon and Venus are the appetitive planets.
That's explaining more than I. Yeah.
Venus was specifically appetite, but the moon was desire. The moon was the desire nature that brought, that brings us to our appetite and desire. So that the desire natures were, desire and appetite were contained within the moon. So that makes perfect sense. And then the moon also rules the stomach.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
All coming together.
Yeah, it does, exactly. So now we're starting to see how that, once again, like I haven't really looked at the Hyleg separately, right? Because often in many cases, the Hyleg it's one of the luminaries, right? It's the sun or the moon, and we're looking at it for all these other things. We're not looking at it for its hylegical function, right? And so I guess maybe that might be something to think about down the road. What else? Anybody else? Mathing, looking at charting in with Hyleg will come both from being the moon and aspects Mercury. I guess. I don't know. If Mercury is, remember Mercury's neutral, right? So he can be daytime, he can be nighttime, he can be female, he can be male. So he can be malefic, he can be benefic. So it's really based on what's going on with Mercury to see if it's good or bad. But it is good in one way. If you've got the moon and Mercury aspecting each other, then you have both aspects of mind in a good relationship, right? Remember one of the things when we talked about infirmities of the soul was one of the things we looked at for insanity and some of these other things were if the moon and the Mercury were not in aspect. Right, so that created a disparity between the two types of mind that they couldn't communicate together. So that would make something of that. That means something of that nature. What else? Anybody else? No? Nichts? Anything? Nothing? Zilcho? I'm shocked. Okay, good. Well, good. Well, then that means that if we come to parts again, that y'all are going to be able to do your own parts by yourself without me helping you. Because I remember the last time that I got back at them, some of y'all with your parts, they were easy as heck, but you still wanted me to look at them. So I just want to be absolutely sure that if you don't have any questions, that means that you're on it and that you don't actually need to ask me any more questions. Otherwise, you've got me for another 12 minutes. All right. Okay. Well, okay, so that's been our course. I'm so sorry. I mean, it's not really my fault. I'm just doing what I usually do, and Zoom is fucking up. So that it's on Zoom, not on me. And I will send this on once I finally get it up. And be sure and immediately click on the link for the YouTube link that I sent earlier because I am. Which one are you looking? Which one, Layla? Which one are you looking to watch again? By the way, all of the ones that are general, so that we'll have the maths, those are all still out there. It's the ones that are specific to techniques. So yeah, so basically everything that's like planetary strength, zodiac, working with aspects, looking at aspects, all of that stuff, that's all still public. So you should be able to still get any of that. And also, I think I kept personal happiness in the ascendant up too. It's just these that I'm keeping private, mostly because we're working more and more with each other's charts, and I just want the people who are here to get the information. And then also at some point this is going to be a course. Oh, you know what I'd love? If you all would do me a favor at some point, we're pretty much towards the end. Next week is kind of the end of this course. I would love it. Maybe what I'll do is I'll send a questionnaire. I'm going to send you a questionnaire at the end of next one. I'd love to know what you think this course is worth financially, because I do want to end up selling it, and I want to know what you all think this would be worth. So you can either email me after this today and kind of say, hey, what you think, or I'll send you something after next week, and you all can give me an idea of what you think it's worth. I'm not obviously trying to get any money from you all, but I'm just talking about what you think is a good, fair price. I want to keep it inexpensive, but I also want it to be fair. And so, yeah, I think you all, having been with me for all this time, would have a good idea of what you think this might be worth for somebody who's going to do it. Okay? All right. You know, they really vary. Yeah, they really vary. They really vary. Like, you'll see a lot, if you go to Chris Warnock's thing, you'll see that his courses are around 300, 100, whatever. I usually charge, like, as far as private, like if I did a private session one-on-one, I usually charge $1 a minute. I charge my $60 an hour thing. But, for a course type thing, that would be a little bit different. So I'm really thinking I'm thinking of two things. One is giving this as like a course without me. Where people get the materials and they get the video or the audio of it, and that's what they get. And then and then they also get one where they're working primarily with me, like what you all have been doing. So that's kind of how I'm looking at it at this point, or I'm trying to figure out, how I would work with it. All right. So yeah, prices really do vary. They can get high to like John Frawley, his course is his horary course is $2,000 or something like that. And he's supposedly very, very intensively involved in it with you as well. Then you've got Warnock, who basically gives you the materials and the videos or the CD-ROMs, and I think there's a minimal amount. He basically grades your stuff and looks at it, but there's a minimal amount. I probably would be doing something closer to what Chris Warnock is doing. But I like this a lot too. I really wanted to have students like in a classroom. So we'll see what ends up happening.